Ken was probably born blushing.
9:30?
Oh, my.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, call to order. We have the invocation by Daryl.
Dear God, thank you for the ability to be involved in the useful work of Coast RTA. We ask you to give us a sense of welfare to meet the needs of those relying on a safe, reliable transit system. Give us the ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Catherine D'Angelo.
Have a roll call? Okay.
Sid Blackwelder.
Here.
Daryl Eichhoff.
Here.
Debbie Gaspley.
We're going to get two in common.
Wilbert James. Lily Jean Johnson.
Here.
Marvin King.
Here.
Joseph Luzara.
Here.
Rob Sheehan. Bernard Silverman.
Here.
Ivory Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Okay, very good, thank you. Acknowledgement of visitors. I believe we have one visitor today.
All except the people on here.
They are employees.
But I'm thrilled to be here today. Sorry I missed February, but
Oh, that's quite all right. All right.
You threw a curveball, we held it in March. Sorry about that.
Okay, just to remind you that we have a 3-minute limit on any comments. Do you have any
Except for
comments?
Bernie's. Except for Bernie's comments.
I'm quiet.
He gets 4.5. Yeah.
They're not your colors in here.
I've been watching CNN too.
Very good. I believe do we have any public comments today? There being none, we go on to employee recognition.
Okay, well, we do have a little bit of employee recognition. My staff apparently took the full court press on doing employee recognition, and had a really wonderful evening on Saturday night. We were recognized. I was recognized, but it really is an authority-wide recognition, if you ask me, because everybody's had a part in it. But we're giving the Making a Difference Award from the Transit Association of South Carolina, and we wanted Employee of the Year for South Carolina DOT. It was an awesome night. It was unexpected and humbling and pretty cool.
That's pretty close to the one you got.
But it was nice. They had some really kind words. I'll forward. I guess the applications were penned by Kevin, and I'll forward those to you all so you can see what staff said. It's pretty pretty cool. Pretty cool.
We had meetings when he wasn't here.
And so on a grander note, behind me is Matt Simon. If you would stand, sir. Let me give you a little bit of background. Saturday night, we were, our tables we had multiple tables, and we were all kind of buzzing about all the stuff that went down with me. And I looked across the table and saw Doug squirming as we went through cutaways and 35-footers, and then second, and third place on the 40-footers, and he was going nuts. And then they called Matt Simon as the top performer in the 40-foot classification. He was smooth through his entire run. I watched the whole thing. And then, obviously there's this test, and is there a wheelchair? What are the other two? Or no, circle check and then a written test, right? And so you got to do well on all three of those, and then maneuver your vehicle through the cones for hitting as few cones as possible. And we're really proud of Matt Simon, and he will be competing in the National Rodeo on May 5th and 6th in Reno, Nevada. Pretty cool. So
Are you going with
that's
them?
what it's all about. I'm going to send Doug.
Oh,
I actually have
great.
something going on that week, so Doug's going to go with him.
Oh,
And,
that's good.
There's a bus and paratransit road conference out there as well, so hopefully we can kind
You
of tag
driving a
team on
bus
some
now?
training.
I'll be driving with it.
Nothing pleases me more than putting Doug on a plane, so, because he
Mine
doesn't like it.
him.
Yeah, so just to kind of carry on the weekend, thank you for reminding me, Matt also got married on Friday. And yeah, so I leaned over to him during the dinner after all this went down. I said, "Man, you had a pretty good weekend." And to top it all off, Doug was awarded a free night at the Marriott Oceanfront hotel room, and he gave it to Matt and his new just all around good weekend. Excellent weekend. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Go get them. We need to send you a reminder then, huh?
It was at the,
Speedway.
at Speedway.
It's only vaguely where it's like roads are wide.
They used to be at the, off of 5,
Yeah.
long time ago.
Bro, we should have sent out a
Should
reminder.
have sent a reminder.
Yeah, it'll be there next year. Thanks, Matt.
And if you'll
Appreciate it.
notice, you
Appreciate
have
all
a
that you do, dude.
you have a new pen today. The pens are a souvenir from the conference for the board members.
Back to work.
Very proud.
Cummins engine.
I begged them for the Cummins guy.
Back to work now.
So it was a good weekend. To say the least. So that's it for employee recognition.
Okay,
You did good.
we have the approval of the minutes. Have a motion on the floor, approve the minutes.
I move we approve the
We have a
minutes.
second?
Ron.
Okay. Do we have any conversation about the minutes, or was everybody was satisfied? Then it's moved and second, and no debate. All right, all in favor of the minutes being approved?
Aye.
Second.
All against? Nay?
Michelle, I'm gonna bring you a tab of.
Got approved, so the motion passed. Okay. Well, we got a service and tax committee report.
You want me to?
Yeah, I was gonna.
I think
all that
you're
good news.
really summing it up.
We had a combined meeting.
Yeah, we had a combined meeting, and really the bulk of the agenda was spent on these new policies and procedures sort of coming down the pike.
And if you missed it, it was exciting.
Oh, yeah, it was
Really, yeah.
riveting. I think.
Barely awake.
Riveting is the
Yeah,
term I would
riveting.
use, but,
Stone cold riveting.
yes.
Yes.
But conversations that we need to have, obviously. I mean, that was what it was centered on for both. In PAC, we also talked a little bit about ADL and new system map and some of the new public information pieces that we have. I just said we've gotten our first shipment of that new system map in, and so Michelle's gonna come in hand there. You can rip off a new system map and check it out. It's pretty. I think they look great. We're also doing something similar for the entertainment shuttle again this year, like we did last year. And I know we have meetings set up with a lot of the resorts to discuss timing and routing and all that stuff, and try to get them excited about it this year again, and give them their new pads, and you know, hopefully really even beat last year in terms of ridership on that route. We
How's it gonna run? How long?
It's gonna start the day after Memorial Day and run through Labor Day. And it'll run from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day. There's 2 buses on it. There's one that comes out of service at 10 and one that comes out at 11. They will turn into 7Xs. They'll run from the transit center back to Conroe.
There's no talk of running it through October?
Well, we had, in our conversations with at least the Hospitality Association and a few of the resorts, they didn't really think that was a huge deal. We may pick out some weekends in the future, like it would be nice to go out for all the different spring break weekends and have
Be
some
nice
service
for
or at least on the weekends.
Or
So that's something that's still on the list. We'll continue to talk right now, and more importantly is trying to get a little bit of money from them to support
Yes.
operations. So we've been in contact with Brad and Stephen over there at the chamber, and they're gonna help us at least have these conversations with some folks that have the money. I know Ripley's interested, and we gotta get in front of some of the major players as a result of the resorts and see if we can't cobble together $25,000 for it. So that's kind of what the goal is.
Or more.
And you scheduled some meetings. Those were the tours of the entertainment shuttle, or were those?
Stephen has not gotten back until they get the information.
But you put something on my calendar. I was just wondering what it was. That related to entertainment shuttle? No?
Not what you tentatively accepted yesterday.
Yeah, what was that?
That's the Memorial Day business outreach.
Oh, okay, that's just coordinating with all our partners and what happens bike week.
We earmarked some dates,
Oh, okay.
waiting for Stephen Green.
Misread, I read it fast. So this is the new, just kind of tears off. It's got, and I'll pass this around, but it's pretty sharp.
Beautiful, yeah.
It's got, centered on Myrtle Beach mostly, but it's got all the routes. They're color coded. Information on how to use the app. There's fare information on here. There's what's tells you everything that's on the website, and then also has major stop listings with their stop numbers to support the texting function that we have. So you can, if you know where your stop is, then you can use that text, that number, and so really good job, Michelle. This looks great.
Yeah, it does, it does. Let me ask you something, Brian. Turning those entertainment express buses into service buses at 10 and 11, what does that do for our database and our formula funding? Is that an advantage to us?
Well, it does a couple things. One, it eliminates some deadhead miles, which helps us and gets a few more passengers on board for a vehicle that's going that way anyway. Other than that, I mean, there's a few individuals out there that use our system that take advantage of it. We don't get huge ridership on it. We do have to keep the transit center open till that time, so there's some dead time at the transit center. But it's not really gonna take us any more staff time, because what we do is just spread out the supervisors over the course of the day. So instead of coming in and doing like a 12 to 8 shift at Casper, they'll do a 4 to 11 or a 3 to 11.
Right.
It's great, Michelle.
Yeah. I thought there was like a big benefit to adding miles.
And even at the bus fare.
Like a formula funding benefit.
Well, revenue miles are in the formula. So yeah, I guess from that perspective, it's not a huge jump for that, but that helps us. Keeps our peak requirement where we need it.
What's the distribution of this new route map? Where does that go?
Michelle, you want to answer that? Where
How do
are
we
you
put
putting
the
this?
distribution?
Actually, we were trying to wait till we had them all in at one time, and I understand some started to distribute it, because at the 100,000 of these, I don't want some hotels to get wind that they've received them when we haven't gotten enough to cover the bases. So, we are going through, it's primarily for hotels and chambers, to educate the public. It's a simple one-sheeter instead of our folded booklet. This system map now will become the benchmarking catalyst for, we're adding Route 1 and the 16 to make it more square, to also put a system map on the buses.
Good.
So that's just gonna take some time because it's a total reconfiguration in order to incorporate all the 16 expresses and 16s and the 1. But it won't have the content that you see on the flip side. It's just for someone to realize where we go with the system map, because we'll have handouts and brochure racks on there eventually too. So this will also become part of the ride guide, which will be a 20 to 24 page booklet with all of the ride routes listed by page and the basic information thing.
Who's
Some
who's
people-
gonna get the 20-page booklet?
That's for the public. Everybody will get that, locals and everyone.
Remember, you know, you've seen that saddle stitched white paper
That was done in-house.
rider's guide that we have. We're gonna marry these two together, and that will be our primary public information document.
And will this be the information then for each of the routes of where we're gonna stop,
The permanent
permanent stops?
stops.
Permanent stops will show up on there, yes, when they become.
Or are these the permanent stops?
They're close. I mean, you know, right now, those are just kind of areas on the
Okay.
map. I mean, they're signified as a point location on the individual maps, individual route maps. But we've got to, you know, go through the process and making sure those locations are safe, and they may move, you know, 250 to,
Right.
you know, feet, in either up to 250 feet in either direction.
How do these numbers work? Why do we go from stop 1 to stop 236 to stop 397?
Yeah, because we don't get to number the stops. Those are numbered by Google Maps. And so, yes, that's a little bit confusing, but, you know, if you're in the app, you can click on your stop and it'll give you the number.
And they
You know,
sync with that.
Right, and then, you know, I think,
Just that this syncs
yeah, it
with,
syncs with it,
Yeah, I got it.
because we have
So,
to go back and forth. and
as
correct.
well as online. So you go online, you see where you want to get on, you can click it, and then you know the name of your stop, and then so this is sort of a reference you can take with you that tells you what number your stop is.
God, this tells you everything. How much you carry. I like this part about the bus fares, because you can never have time to figure those out.
It's a lot of information, and I don't think it gets any more consolidated than this, to be honest with you.
No, this is a nice.
It's pretty nice.
This is really good.
Now, you don't have,
Conway, route code over there. Number 1's not.
Yeah, the number 1 is not on the map. It's listed on the back, though, isn't it?
It's just listed that we offer service.
Once they contribute money, we're gonna list them.
Well, yeah, that doesn't really have anything to do with it. I mean, there's a reference to it. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the yellow dot, Route 1 service to Conway.
And then you see the logo at the
And
bottom.
so when this goes into a booklet, Mr. Wilson, you can go to Route 1 and see the schedule and the map
yeah,
and everything. But the issue is the sizing. I mean, our service area is ridiculous to try to fit it on one piece of paper with any kind of detail.
well, what I think you say you went to Conway to ask for more money, you know, I think you
Yes.
probably need to
Well, we have a route
tell them
map.
where we're gonna give them more than what they're getting right now. If we ask them for more money.
Well, then I give.
I have a response to that in my manager's report. I'm not gonna steal my thunder.
But Mr.
Okay.
Wilson, just so
Okay.
you're aware, it will be on the system map in the buses and in the ride guide. It's just, this is a different purpose.
Yeah, that sole system map is really a poster that's gonna be up in the buses. So you could, you know, you get on a bus, you can see all the different locations, and it will include that, include those maps.
Will we have individual maps? All of them?
That's
Yes,
in the ride
that's
guide.
in the ride guide,
That's
that's
in the ride guide that we're creating.
Oh,
It's a booklet, it's 20 to 24 page.
Okay, so it's not.
That's small, right, that they put in their pocket?
Well,
it's page size right now, it will
Oh.
get smaller.
Oh, okay.
it'll be standard brochure, 9.5 by 11 or 9 by 12.
So it'll get really wide pockets.
4.5.
Right. To wear an
It'll fit in your purse.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm not sure if there's anything you all wanted to add on service and pack. Ms. Johnson, you good?
I think Doug talked about some changes that he made with the transit.
Did the paratransit?
That seems to be working.
Yes, we're, as you see in the board report, you can look at the KPIs for the demand response, and we got up to 0.9 passengers per hour. Remember, our goal is to get to 0.1, so we're moving towards that goal, or to 1.0, excuse me. But even more importantly, the new scheduling that Doug has sort of taken under his wing with our new employee, Dashina. They are really making inroads in reducing the labor costs for that service. We're only bringing in drivers that we need on a daily basis, and so we should start seeing some good numbers related to the budget more than anything else. Still a work in progress on trying to get that the passengers per hour number up, but I think they're doing a great job.
Are those drivers part-time or PRN, or how do they bring them only when we need them?
Mostly, I mean, we're spreading them out a little bit more during the week, so they are probably, I don't know what they're averaging.
It may or may not be getting
but it
40
might not
hours,
be
yeah.
full 40. A
Okay.
bunch of them are part-time, or three-quarter time. We haven't gone without some concerns on drivers' part on not getting enough hours.
Like I'm wondering about
And,
benefit for them.
we just keep telling them, look, they'll come. It just means that we'll be able to put more people on the buses for the same amount of money that we were spending before these.
I understand it from our perspective, transfer to the driver who's on call, or they do or don't get benefits depending on their hiring status when they came in.
Well, part-timers get some prorated benefits, so they'll get like a prorated holiday pay and things like that, depending on their schedule. And then if someone's full-time and they're only getting 36 hours, they're still getting their full.
That's what, you answered my question.
All right, if I were to take my car and park down back to the back of the Wilson Transfer Center, what bus would I take to get to the boardwalk? When you don't have the, the entertainment shuttle running?
If you're at, you're probably walking from that point.
Well, that's the problem.
boardwalk.
Right, there's no way because it goes toward,
Yeah, we're
right?
heading south on Kings Highway in
Yeah.
both of those routes, so we don't have that
Okay.
outside of the summer. In the summertime, it would make more sense to park at Broadway Beach by the aquarium.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You get a straight shot to the boardwalk.
But some people come Easter time too, down, I'm thinking about different neighborhoods that could use to go to the boardwalk without paying to park on the beach.
Right.
It's a short walk at that point, but it's still a walk.
It is a walk.
Yeah, but if you're limping, it's
Yeah,
not.
no, it's a walk.
You want to sign up for paratransit? Happy to transport you. Transport
You don't
over
come
there.
into Little River because you don't have a fixed route.
But if you're parking on our service area, you'd be, and
I
it's within
know.
3/4 of a mile, so.
Oh, really?
So you could park up at the hospital and get a ride to boardwalk,
Yeah.
assuming that you are declared to have a disability that meets the criteria.
Oh, okay. I'll take 2 cans. I'll really will.
My comment is always available to you.
We gotta do something about these jitney services.
Who's my driver?
I'm an Uber driver for free these days.
That's a bad business model. So that's it for service and packs. So thank you for remembering that.
One officer. Oh, yours. No, it's for you. Well, I'll do it for you. Now you
Full service board.
have one of your own.
West. Do you have any comments today?
Yep,
Do you have any comments?
3 minutes.
No.
3 minutes.
Okay,
So
Joe.
finance committee.
Okay, so now we go to Finance Committee report, Marvin?
Sure, absolutely, thank you. So we had a pretty interesting meeting last week, and thank you for everyone that was able to attend. We spent most of our time talking about the audits. Our auditor came in and went through page by page for us on the audit, so that was pretty interesting. We also talked about our budget revision and went into the February financials. But just a little bit on the audit. Basically, as you look at that, if you hadn't had a chance to read your report yet, there were three main findings that we had there. And these are all things that we've talked about before, but namely we had a finding on the drawdowns, which is how they were being managed there, just cash management side of it. Working through it, so expect that to be cleared up.
Those related to use of the overhead rate and really occurred during the transition when we're going from not using an overhead rate to using an overhead rate.
So that should be pretty clear. OPT schedules were the second of the three, and again, something that we knew about and working through, just writing them up to be a little bit more accurate. And then the last three were just matching the capital assets to the funding and just trying to track that. And so you'll see 6, but again, they duplicate, so they're the same three.
Wherever you can classify, those are not deficiencies.
Right,
Those
they're,
are
exactly, so those are
Yeah, they're not-
unmodified reports, so.
Yeah, they're not
it's
material
clean.
weaknesses, they're significant deficiencies, and yes, very important point that we got an unmodified opinion on those,
Absolutely.
which is the main reason why we brought him in the first place. And Ron still has his hair.
That's right. So overall, very good audit. So again, it was clean. There were no issues with the financial statements. The numbers looked good. It was just internal control, cleaning up just the process of it.
And we have additional copies. If anybody who wasn't at the meeting would like a copy, we have bound versions, we have stapled versions. We're also more than willing to send you a PDF. We actually have a PDF now that I think you can print from. Is that
yeah, fair.
How about that? So,
Brian, I don't see it on our agenda, but we need to move to accept that today, do we not?
yeah, it's in the resolutions.
Which one?
Number 7.
The acceptance of the
Acceptance.
Third bullet, yep.
I'm slow reading today, yeah.
Michelle just needs a PDF.
Yeah, I need a PDF for that so I can upload it for the website.
Okay.
All right, so we will have a vote on just accepting the audit in our resolution. Any questions though on any of the items? I figured someone in the room can answer. One of the
Well,
we'll figure it out.
I guess just so everybody understands, these OPT schedules are for the state. And the biggest rub on those was that when we first generated them, they didn't tie out to the CFA, which is the Schedule of Federal Expenditures in our system. And the reason for that is that we get these small amounts of state funding that we're matching to major 5307, the urban side grants. And so we had, a little bit of back and forth, I think, from both sides, trying to figure that out. But I had some really good conversations with the people at the Office of Public Transit at SCDOT who are using these schedules, and they agreed that we kind of got hit for nothing on this stuff. So at some point we'll get them to weigh in on it and see where we go from here, because it was while we have a better understanding of how they work, how the accountants want to see them. I don't want to put more work on us than is necessary.
Is Horry County and Georgetown County make copies of the report yet?
We're waiting for you all to accept it, and then they will all get distribution of it. And we're also working with the BFTA clearinghouse and all these other little hoops we got to jump through to complete it. So
One of the
all has to be
problems-
done by the 31st.
One of the problems too is we're kind of unique in that we have these rural-urban split that we have to deal with, that even the auditor, that kind of threw them for a loop. So they had to do some research on their end to figure out how to prepare these OPT schedules. So it's kind of a learning curve for both the auditor and for us to figure out how to properly prepare these things and type them out. But we eventually got it done, so.
Ryan, when you speak to Horry County Transportation for the next April meeting?
Yeah, I'm not on the agenda yet.
They
I
skipped
just got-
March and they,
Yeah, let me see if they're having a meeting. I did mention the audit to the budget workshop last week. And, said, got on basically what Marvin just said. And there was no batting of eyes or, issues with it. So they know it's coming and know that it's in pretty good shape.
When we,
And I mentioned it to the city of Myrtle Beach as well yesterday.
I have a question. So has everything been resolved? There's no more items we need to clean up? I mean, we don't expect any reoccurrence of any of these issues?
Once we get policies and procedures codified, I think we'll be in good shape. And we're gonna get those done just in time for training.
when we did the RFP to hire this auditor, wasn't that for a 3-year contract?
It was.
So when we were talking last week about having them back or not, that's settled, right?
Still to be determined.
We can break that contract?
Absolutely. I'm not as angry as I was when we first started talking about this. And so we're gonna let the anger completely subside before we make a decision, because that is an expense to go back out for bid.
But the auditor was not open to any reasonable fix on reconciliation to those OPT state reports. And I'll just tell you, I don't want to have 2 more years of listening to the same goofiness. If in fact, more officially we are told this is not an auditable issue. So I would just as soon as not have these significant deficiencies noted. And if that means make or break, I mean,
We've asked them for the regs that they're looking at that require this, because on the OPT scat side, they don't think it requires it.
yeah.
And so, yes, we'll get a resolution of that before we bring them back.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I have a problem with is, the first check was what, $12,000?
Yeah.
And they send me a draft document I can't work with. And I'm sorry, I don't care who you are, that's my draft. I paid for it. And so if they're gonna not relax that, then we probably won't have them back. They need to send me something that I can print out, I can mark up, I don't have to go back and forth between our notes. I mean, because Ron and I spent a significant amount of staff time. People thought my office was in here.
Yeah.
Because we were in here looking at the screen and going back and forth, the written cut, things like that. It was a total pain in the ass.
Better part of a week, just
So-
because we
So
couldn't.
he
space
says
it
it's his
for
policy,
our
and if it's his policy and he's not willing to change it, then
I don't
I think that in
I don't
itself
like
is a
paying-
breach of contract.
I don't like paying someone to talk down to us. I
Yeah.
think by getting rid of him would tell him just how we feel about it, because he treated us like we were idiots. He really did.
He's,
Listen,
I think he's very
Like
thorough, he's
the
very
You don't-
good, he's very
But you don't have to
competent,
accept
but,
that.
yeah,
We
he's-
don't have to accept that as,
Right.
we can
Honestly-
always go home and talk to, God, our husbands and let them talk down like that,
honestly, as mind numbing as it was to go page by page.
Agree.
As mind numbing as it was to go page by page, it helped me.
Yeah.
Well,
lot
he
to
was
do that.
teaching us,
So-
but,
I'm not sure, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, but we're not weird like that.
You got 45 minutes of it, we had 6 months.
I was gonna ask you if you thought that was more mind numbing than policies and procedures.
Well, his
They're about the
attitude, his attitude and his tone, he may have taught effectively, but he is not a good teacher. And, there are better ways to convey information.
We're through it. We got through it.
Yeah. Professors are hard on rotten teachers,
Yeah.
except for Marvin, he's okay with it.
Some of the professors, they go home and they do this to their mothers, because I know.
All right, is there any other questions on the audit? All right, well, the next item we talked up was the budget revision, so we'll take a look at our approval of the new budget. Your financials, though, are with the changes to the budget, so as you look at the
Yes,
financials.
so the financials, the total year-to-date budget is based on the revised budget that needs to be approved.
financials over.
So just realize that those numbers that you see are with the budget.
So, can you give like a quick review just for myself in minutes and stuff? What's increasing and what's?
So
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Right there.
All right, we have some overages and ops, which mostly relate to staffing the Myrtle Beach Transit Center. Excuse me, the Wilson Transit Center. I need to start calling it that. And that was about 41,000 over the course of the year that we didn't account for. We have some money, we're way over budget on PM, on preventive maintenance. So it covers all but 18,000 of those overages, and I'm hoping that Tom, with the new buses coming and our decision not to put any more big money into the Gilligs, will hopefully reduce that over the course of the year, and he can squeeze out that 18,000 in his budget over the course of the rest of the year.
So how much is the number minus the 18?
So we added 85,000 to that budget. Changes in the capital program, we now have 4 new flyers in there, and they're all in one grant, which is huge for us. And it came about by virtue of an additional $1 million that the county is contemplating giving us as of July 1st for buses only. All right, so I've incorporated that into this revision. We've made it through first reading with no issues. We'll keep an eye on that, but I think we're in pretty good shape, so I think it's okay to put it into this budget revision. And that in itself, I mean, I have about 400, let's see, I'm using about 480,000 of that. 400 is for these 40 footers, and by virtue of putting them all in one grant, then I had some 5309 money, 5339 money, which is bus and bus facilities from RTA that I had in there that I'm able to move out. Use additional county money to match those dollars for some 24 passenger cutaways. And those are getting increasingly important for 2 reasons. One is that our cutaways are slowing down, the ones that we have met their useful life. So there's 2 of them out there, so we'll replace those 2, and we'll replace the last Gillig with those 3 24 passenger cutaways. And then there's some service changes we're contemplating that I want to tell you about in my general manager's report, so I'm not telling you what those are yet. They almost steal my thunder.
So when you say first reading, you mean first reading of the budget?
First reading of the county budget, we're in there. And we got some questions during my presentation last week. Dr. Sheen was with me.
Right in the country.
Did you?
Yeah,
Wow.
4.5 hours for 20 minutes of speaking and 3 questions.
But you know, it's
2
clear,
of which had multiple subparts from Councilman Prince.
the aftermath of the budget, it's clear they've got many bigger issues they're fighting, and we just sort of slid right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was a little disappointed that Chairman Lazarus said that they were coming back from lunch. It's like, okay, we're gonna handle the T's. Transportation and trash.
Right.
At least it's
So
a
I-
first.
So I got up there and I said, well,
We're not the trash.
I wore another T, my tie, because we're happy to be part of the T's.
Oh,
God, it was,
I thought we were over with that.
no, I think that was a good thing, actually. They got more issues with solid waste than the
Solid
anything with
waste,
us.
right.
So.
Well, and even out of his way, there was like a half line mentioned, almost said, and maybe just I heard and it wasn't said, that maybe we shouldn't give them the $1 million until they have to commit the money. And the chairman went out of his way to just put that idea dead on arrival. So,
Who's gonna deal with that? I mean,
Josh Powell,
yeah.
he's one of the assistant county administrators.
And he just said, no, we're not gonna do that. And so he understands it. And they were filled with nothing but praise for Brian and for the authority and for the turnabout.
Well, they have,
So this is,
right.
I suppose this will come up more in your manager's report, but, we're in a pretty good place with it.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape. We've also added 420,000 in state funds that were awarded for vehicles. Okay, so now my 4 new flyers are last year's award of 905,000 plus 420 in state funds plus 400,000 roughly in these new county funds for a total of like 1.7 million, which is what we're spending on these buses. They're coming in July. County money is available July 1st. The state money is available right now. The big thing is we've got to get, our grant has been delivered to the state. Now, the state has to turn around and put that grant into FTA, and so there are nerves associated with whether or not FTA is going to get through that process quickly or not. So we'll keep a close eye on that, and I'll keep you posted. All right, so to cover these ops and preventive maintenance options, we are using a little bit of additional local match. We got some local match back basically because of this influx of county dollars. But we'll be doing an amendment to the 5307 grant that will have the preventive maintenance. We're gonna get that ADA provision in there where we can get 80% on our dollars, and then, which we didn't have before. The bus stop program and paying the city for the Wilson Transit Center will all be in that urban grant, okay?
Brian?
Yes,
I think we have a.
yes ma'am.
I'm just wondering if you've heard anything from Georgetown County.
We have a slightly larger number in their budget. I haven't heard from them, but they've also got a placeholder for capital, right? Ms.
Yes.
Johnson? So we have a place, so it's going good down there too.
And city?
We've made inroads to them, but we haven't really hit them up for budget yet. We're kind of talking about needs with them right now. We will be going to Polly's and Merle's and Surfside, so to get some help for
Really,
them.
I'm out of town, really.
Yeah, okay, so is it just Polly's and Surfside?
Yeah.
Find some extra funding, but the biggest thing for us right now is covering things like increases in the pension plan, and but as much as I would love to get hourly service on the 16 route, so we're working on that, but it's still a work in
Well, I
progress.
just wondered if you've gotten some additional.
Yes, we've also gotten really good response from the economic development folks down there. They want to try to do some employment-based work down there. That's something that's on our radar at least.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Budget?
Also, Brian, you represent anything about Andrews, or you're not even looking at Andrews?
Well, not yet. I mean, it's in the hopper, and I will address that tangentially in the general manager's report. Because
Just in a minute, we're just gonna say, get to the damn general.
I know. I want to. Otherwise, it's gonna be like 30 seconds. The budget includes the change in our indirect cost rate as a result of our review of the cost allocation plan. We went from 32.15%, which was our provisional rate, because of my expenses not being as billable as we thought, the labor charges for me. It dropped down to 27.27%. And then we've done our truing for that would have been what it should have been for FY16. And so then we did the truing for FY17, and we're down to 26.19%. It's not causing as many issues as I originally anticipated. It just means that we're using local funds to pay for more admin than we were before. But we had plenty of expenses in operating in PM in both the urban and rural program, where we're just bumping up the volume for the federal funds in those categories and more local funds into admin. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when does that number change again? That's FY18?
Well, we are on the hook for going back to October 1st and going to this 26.19. To date, we've been going 32.15, so we're on the hook to go back and fix in our books back to October 1st.
Of 16.
16, we don't have to do anything. FY16, we don't have to do anything. So really, the way the rule works is that you have to basically do the math on how much you should have drawn from last year, and then any changes in your overhead for this year, and true it up for the next year. And if that change results in more than a 20% change in your overall overhead rate, then you have to reapply. You have to go back to them and do a new rate. So we will be going back probably for a new rate for FY18, so between now and the end of the year. Primarily because we want to get a good number for me in there. We've actually asked FTA for some additional support from the FMO consultants to help us with this truing up and resubmitting the rate. What was the other thing, Ron?
I'm sorry, I was reading something.
Developing a procedure that gets the grant number on operating and preventive maintenance costs. Because they've agreed with us that it should be done in arrears. And so we just wanna make sure we have our procedures right. And even if we get procedures done, we can tweak it after we talk to them. So I don't know how long before they're gonna get here, but we do ask for, 1 or 2 more days of their assistance to help us get through some of that stuff. On other notes, as far as the budget is concerned, we did increase fuel a little bit. Fuel was getting a little out of whack. I think that might have been more of because we were staggering our budget amounts for off-season months versus peak season months. And so it might come back to us, but I just wanted to be safe and make sure we had enough money. And fuel prices have gone back down. And I bumped up legal from 50,000 to 75,000 because I want to put it on them to help us get moving on the international buses, the impairment loss equipment. And they've already started that, so we're moving forward.
Who are you working with on that?
One on Henry's staff, Jim Gillum. So he's working on it, and then it's going to start with a letter writing campaign. We gotta get a letter to state as well as the feds, and then to the people who sold it to us, because we feel like they're in breach of contract. They didn't give us buses that would last 7 years, so that's the first step. And then if we have to go to the National Highway Traffic Safety Council, then we'll do that too. That's where it's at.
It's hard to predict in a crystal ball that you're gonna spend another 25,000, at least you've put it into the budget line. What's the most likely outcome of that in terms of bottom value dollar?
Well, we have a $271,000 liability on the books right now for that. First thought is, I think we misrepresented those buses. We put them in as 10-year instead of 7-year, which is what they were intended for. So we'll get a small decrease there. Depending on how things go and what national bus sales will do for us, which is, I don't think we'll get anything out of them for the most part, unless we take it to court. I'm just hopeful that we can show to FTA and the state that these things were true lemons and they'll believe it. So I'd say 50-50 shot on that, and to me it's worth, I'm gonna pay for the 25K or whatever. I don't really have a number. I'll get you a number on what I think the legal cost will be. But, I'm paying for that with this reduction from a 10-year to 7-year bus, for all intents and purposes.
And how much service do they have in them?
I know one of them has 80,000 miles on it in 4 years. And they are supposedly 250,000 mile buses. One of them has a new engine in it already. And I would venture a guess, just knowing the number of times that we sent it up to Florence for both warranty work as well as stuff that we've done with those buses, 20,000 of that is driving it back and forth to Florence easily. So I think we have a case. It's just a matter of understanding the rules. There's no lemon law for commercial vehicles. So it's just gonna take time. And I don't have a timeline on when it gets resolved. The biggest thing is we're on the hook to start moving on it. And it'll be important to do that before triennial.
Well, you're not chasing pennies with dollars, if there's some likely outcome worth, gambling on.
I think there's a good shot of getting relieved of the liability without any damage.
Have we done an appraisal on those, though? Do we have any idea of what the condition they're in, to mitigate some of the, if we do sell it, or if we do get some dispensation on the thing?
To me, I think you represent an ethical quandary of selling these things. These things are pieces of crap.
Well, that's true too.
I don't think I want anybody putting them on the road unless there were major overhauls.
Salvage or something.
Certainly more than what they're worth. So, that's same held true for the 16 we got rid of back in June of 15.
Yeah, they must have some parts value or what,
They have metal value, approximately $850. That's pennies.
Oh, we don't get any type of warranty from the manufacturer?
There's been a lot of warranty work done. I think one of those engines was a warranty job. So we didn't pay for the engine necessarily. It's just the whole package is fraught with danger. There's brake fire, concerns, there's, engines aren't holding up. These are 2012 fuselages stuck on the 2010 chassis, so who knows if the systems were really compatible. They have these coma brakes, which are these electromagnetic brakes on the drive shaft, like a Jake brake, that is designed that, it's really for hilly territory. I haven't seen any hills around here unless you're going over the waterway. And that's about it. So it's, this bus would have been good for a church in Asheville. Maybe, because, you don't need to use it as much. It can't handle the amount of pressure put on it by putting it into operation every day, stopping and starting, and it's just not built for what we needed it for. And, there are mistakes that were made in the procurement process that were big red flags, and we shouldn't have bought. So that's really what we're up against. That's the other side.
Well, your ethical issues are gonna go sky high if we sell them to a church in Asheville.
Yes, yes. And I have a new standard to uphold.
Right.
So I think that's it on budget.
Yeah.
Pretty good with the budget. It is, I've checked the numbers and I think we're pretty good for 18. Depending on how hard the hit is on pensions. But I'm hopeful that the additional money that was spent on capital for like the new transit center and some of those things that we weren't really we still have like $10,000 worth of benches to put in there and things like that. Those costs won't be there next year, and we can convert those to satisfying our 3% increase and getting the pension stuff straight.
Can we get some partitions in for the washrooms?
Not yet. We're having trouble finding them, but we'll keep working on
I'm
that.
looking at those plaques back there. Where are you gonna put them where people can see them? How about the Wilson Transfer Center? Well, it's true, where they can see.
Everybody here wants me to put them in my office, but
Who's gonna see it in your office?
I was thinking the boardroom. But,
Yeah, we used
we
to
have
have
driver
a,
awards
we used
that
to
we're
have a
putting in as well.
cabinet out there with loads of plaques in
Yeah.
it. I don't know if we deserved any of them, but we had.
Lynette, are you on it?
I'm on it.
Lynette will figure it
Well,
out.
not many people come in through that entrance.
Whatever happened to that?
There is a nice, we've updated the board out there with some stuff from things, so Erica updated the pictures and stuff out here on one of our bulletin
Oh, it
boards in the
looks so
thing.
nice.
So we have,
Oh, yeah.
the award, pictures from the award ceremony and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it
It's cool.
looks really nice.
Perfect.
So that's everything on budget.
Yeah. And
That
so,
cabinet was sold.
so as you
Oh, it
see,
was?
with that budget change, as you look at the financials, look a lot better. So office supplies are now back to positive. Vehicle maintenance was a big thing, but now we're still a little bit negative there. But I think we should be able to catch up over the rest of the year. So it's about 19,000 for the month. But again, with some catch up, especially with new buses, we should get back to positive range.
I'm hopeful. I think we will.
Okay,
We got a little bit of slush in fuel too, hopefully.
okay, that concludes finance, and, Myra?
Yeah, and so we will have we'll have a vote on making that budget change as well. So that's a part of one of the approvals that we'll have in a little bit.
And when is our next finance meeting?
17?
Is that the second Wednesday, is that it? The third Wednesday?
19?
Yeah, I'm trying to look at it.
Let's see, the board meeting is the 26th. Yeah. Finance will be the 19th.
Well, and I failed to mention when we were talking service and pack, I would like to push service and pack to that week if we can, because the week of the 10th is spring break, and I had plans to take kids to the
And
Smithsonian.
I won't be here.
So can we push them? Are you okay with that? So we'll do 9, 10, and 11, Marvin, so yours will be at 11?
11, okay.
What day is
Is
it?
that
That's the
right?
19th.
That's gonna be the
Wednesday,
19th. And so most of that day will be beautiful sausage making of policies and procedures. So you'll enjoy that.
You know, when we,
Anybody seen a video of sausage?
Take some notes.
just
I just want,
before we finish the finance committee meeting, or rather, before we finish that report, at the end of the finance committee meeting, you asked us for permission to have Joe be able to sign, to have the chair be able to sign a proposal, a budget proposal, right?
Well, we want you to approve the revised budget. Are you talking about the short-term loan?
No, I thought that you asked our permission for Joe to be able to sign something before we had the full board meeting.
I think that was on the signed first contract.
Yeah.
Yes, that was for a grant. That's included in this budget revision.
Actually, Rob, I think what you were talking about, we thought to go ahead and sign for the budget revision, but we said we wanted more people involved, just in case.
Yeah, no, I had to put this grant in for the vehicles.
Yeah.
So that was for the 4 vehicles, and it was part of the budget revision, and we wanted to send it into the state to get the
Well, the discussion about the budget was we didn't want to go with a, just a simple pass-through vote. We wanted an individual vote on that. But how often does it come up that, and it comes up in the context of meeting scheduling and whatnot, how often does it come up that you've got a problem sitting on a grant waiting for us to meet or waiting for an appropriate signature? That was the first I had heard in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, last year, we were really doing all the basic grants, and we got them done in January. This year, we have a state grant that needs to come up, but it's not until July 1st, so I was gonna do it in May. Or no, April, so it's 2 months in advance, so we're in good shape for that. That's also part of this, and it doesn't mean a whole lot of money for this budget because it starts July 1st, so it's only 3 months, and it continues on into FY18 for us. And we really only have one rural and one urban grant.
Yeah.
And so I just think we're in decent shape.
Okay. Then there's no sense going where I was gonna go, which is to try to find some efficiencies for you.
there is an executive committee in the bylaws, and I forget exactly, I don't think it spells out the duties or when it's called together exactly, but it's in there. And it goes,
Are there any changes to be done to this bylaws?
We haven't,
I haven't
oh,
seen
did I take
any.
it up?
I've not seen any yet.
We revised it.
I don't think we all
To
got a
add.
copy of that. It was sent out, email, I think, but I don't think we got
Yeah.
firm,
Did I take it? I'm sorry.
I can print out a copy for each one of you and have it for the committee meeting.
All right, great,
It's okay.
great. But I
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I check it over every once in a while to make sure that
Yeah.
there's any changes.
Yeah.
We do have, I'm glad he mentioned the whole resolutions thing, because we have the resolution for our bus stop designation program. We have this resolution for short-term loan agreements. We talked about in Finance Committee
Yes.
about setting it up so that I could go for one of those when I needed it, as long as it met certain criteria.
Yes.
We put 250,000 cap, we put in a 90-day cap in terms of how often we pay it back, or by when we pay it back. And so I do need approval from you on that, and I think we can have more discussion when it comes up in the agenda, if there's any additional questions about it.
Do we pay
And then
off
you
the
are
pre-
approving this budget revision as well.
Do you pay off the previous one before you get the new one, or you always have them running?
I think that's our goal. I suppose with a $250,000 cap, it's possible we might have 2 running at once.
Okay.
But again, we're using it for payroll, cash flow. We have a big capital expenditure we need to make, those types of
Right.
things.
So
If
you're
it's
really
over
running-
if we need more than 250, then we're gonna come back to you for a separate resolution.
Right, so, your other monies come in.
Right, so it's based on a grants receivable or accounts receivable basis, and that's the collateral we use. We also put a provision in there to use our O&M reserve as collateral.
Now, this resolution, does this mean that you have to do it each time, or
Yeah,
are
we
we
didn't
gonna
do-
give you,
we
are we
didn't-
gonna give you approval to run the system?
Well, this is, so we're not gonna have to do it every time, but we did leave them out of consent agenda because we kinda got to the end of the meeting and, you know, we had this budget revision and spent as much time on as we probably could have. And, so we wanted to leave it open so that you all would have a chance to discuss it if you need to.
I have a couple questions, but we're gonna get to that later, right?
Yeah.
And time-wise today, I would like to stick it into executive session for a not terribly long meeting, but I hope people's schedules permit that.
Yeah, so we can move forward. Was there anything else on
Nope,
finance?
was it?
Okay, let's go on to the general manager's report.
So I do do.
God, speaking of all the hot air that's going to come out, should we open the windows?
Did you enjoy your ride on the Explorer?
You know, yeah, it's a little noisier than I would have liked.
I'm
The agenda?
looking for the agenda.
Here.
Page of the agenda.
Here's the
Yeah, but it had my notes on it.
Oh,
There it is, right there.
There you go.
how'd you get it?
I
You put it
was-
too close to me.
It was totally my fault. I was spread out and,
Crisis
I'm
averted.
just cleaning up a little bit.
okay, AVL update. We sort of put it in no uncertain terms that we needed the bus stop annunciation up and operational prior to triennial on May 18th. They have acknowledged that. They are working on a two-speaker system for our DART buses. The new buses coming will actually have full speakers down the whole length of the bus. There are some other AVL updates that they're kind of behind on that they've pledged to move up, mostly missing stops and stuff like that. And then also they're addressing some of the issues with the app itself, like when you press on a bus, the bus information comes up, but then when you close out of that, the alignment that it's on disappears. You have to you have to go back in and pull that route back up in order to see the alignment. So they're working on that stuff. And that kind of stuff, I think, is, you know, we tell people refresh, and that usually resolves some of the issues. But we did have a little bit of issue with their responsiveness. I wrote an email to their president on Friday while I was sitting in at the conference, and I said, look, you'll need to start setting some expectations with us. I know you're busy. I know they have some growing pains because they're a pretty small company. But we're twisting in the wind here. We don't know when all this stuff's getting done. We spoke to him on March 7th, and as of last Friday, I hadn't heard from him. So, we heard from them Tuesday, I think. So I think they're on the hook. I mentioned already that I spoke to the county and the city of Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach Council was yesterday. It was really well received. I'm talking a lot about our increases in ridership. I'm still putting a little note in there that, I'd really like to be our funding profile to look more like Columbia's, where they're using a lot of local funds for operating and federal funds for their capital programs, and that's kind of the long-term goal. I think that's lost on some of the council folks, but that's okay. Just want to keep saying it. The county workshop meeting went great. It was short and sweet, and they're supporting us, I think, as best they can. I think, all of the business with having a mill equivalent or something that had some growth in it was their concerns about having future capacity. I think they were good for 18 and 19, but they didn't have the money in hand for 20 and 21 and 22. So hopefully we can move forward on that in future years. And honestly, we were ahead of schedule as far as that's concerned. I do have this concern though in FY19 of running out of cap space for things like the pension and things like that, so I'm just gonna keep an eye on that.
And honestly, everybody's worried about the pension.
Yeah, and they have the same problem on a much larger scale that I have, so I think they'll at least understand that issue and hopefully will be able to help us.
State pensions, it still look like it's gonna go up to 18.6 for us?
Yes, over the course of a number of years. I think it's even more than 2.
Okay.
But it is a 2% bump July 1st for us, and a 1% bump or 0.5% bump for employees.
Employees are capped at 9.
Right.
And they will be capped at 9%, so that they won't have any more bumps after that. I guess 2 things from the conference. I sat on a panel on Friday afternoon, and the whole thing about the panel was if I knew then what I know now, before I took this job as GM, it was really fun. I had, we got some really great questions. I had several people come up to me afterwards and say, yeah, that was really, really interesting to get some insight on the, what general managers have to deal with and things like that. And I think the biggest thing for me, and I'll just quickly kind of tell everybody what my main point was, is that I knew coming into this job that employee morale was going to be important. But even so, I underestimated the importance of it. And got really lucky with the bus purchase. That made things a little bit easier for drivers and mechanics alike. And I just think we have really good morale right now. I think everybody's sort of rowing in the same direction. And maybe when I took the job, putting more emphasis on that would have backfired. I don't know. But I think it's important that people think that this is
any more emphasis than what you did.
well. I just felt like, it wasn't. It's always something I knew was important, but it was. I think a lot of it has been sort of side effects of other things that have been done here, and a lot of it, especially from an admin perspective, is having a little more direction and a little more say in how things are going. More than anything, you look at Kevin and you look at others. They're empowered now to make the right decision and move forward
But driving crappy buses that are breaking down all the time and listen to everybody complain,
Well,
those are
that's-
the side effects.
Well,
And-
that's
and
what
the
I
point
heard the
that
drivers
they
say.
cause
The
it.
drivers said, they didn't like to drive this bus or that. And that's only because I've talked to them when they were at a party.
Yeah.
You know,
And the point that I made in my remarks was that people would have a logo on their shirt and they would cover it up
Really?
when they were out. They want people to know that they work at Coast RTA, and that is no longer the case.
Well,
And
that's
so as long as
because
you're
we
not going
had
out drinking, wear it.
Well, that's because we had such bad publicity, so many terrible things
Right.
were going on.
So
you
that
know?
was part of it. But
And they didn't want people
What's
to,
another thing that you,
I'm trying to think. I still struggle with our data collection. And being a data head and a planner, it drives me nuts that we don't have a good, clear picture of everything that's going on with the system. We have a better picture now, and it's still a work in progress. I mentioned that deal where somebody had this spreadsheet over there, and they were taking data on it hand, and then putting it back in the data sheet, and then printing the data sheet and handing it to someone over here, who then put it into another data sheet. That stuff drives me insane.
It's good enough for government.
Oh my God. But,
and then they put it on the bottom of
even
the
this
file.
morning, I'm going back and forth with NTV on why we don't submit information on passenger miles traveled. And it's because we don't have a good data system to do it. I was like, the way they do that in most systems is they take how many people are on board and they multiply that times the distance from one stop to the next stop.
Yeah.
And then they do that to the next one. I don't have stops. I don't know where people are getting on. It's like, and frankly, it hasn't been a priority. We're starting a program to implement stop signs and stuff. I said, but, and I was like, why do we need it? I know we're forfeiting $50,000-$60,000 a year in the funding, but it's, we'll get there. And so, that's just stuff that we just kind of keep picking off. And I met with the route match folks up there. There's an old friend of mine that works for route match, and he pledged to get some training down here, and so we can get some more, data support for how we're scheduling paratransit. And who knows, in the future we might use route match to schedule fixed route, and labor and all that stuff, and all these steps moving toward big boy transit or big girl transit. And so that was one. It's like I didn't know what I was getting into from a data perspective.
You notice he looked at you, he counts us as big boys.
I looked at both of you. I looked at both of you sitting there across. So, you have a resolution coming up to approve us to negotiate and award a contract to AECom for our bus designation program. I will tell you that we had 2 bids on that. I will tell you the second bidder is pretty upset. I'm meeting with him on Friday. All expected, and hopefully we'll deal with it. We have pretty good reasons for not accepting his proposal. He's already tried to do a FOIA, which isn't really appropriate. If he wants to protest it, he's welcome to protest it. But I'm having a one-on-one with him on Friday morning, and I will take care of it. He's already called the state and done everything that he can, so.
Then he thinks you're
It's
gonna
just such a
hire
pain
him?
in the neck. Well, yeah, and that's a question I'll ask him. Do you ever want to work for us?
Right,
You might want to stand down.
Or is he
Yeah,
just?
I am the appellate. If he wants to appeal the decision, he comes to me. If he does not happy with what I say, he can come to you. But we have,
good.
we have a pretty good
Boy, take
standing.
care of him.
And our review committee, of which Lori was part of, they did a great job. So I'm not worried about it. I'll stand behind their decision. And I was out of it. I didn't have anything to do with the decision, even though I'm more than a year out from my days at AECom.
Do we have written criteria that you all use to evaluate them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the big thing is he's bringing a 100% DVE team, although they're not completely certified yet. We have to do some work on their certification. We asked for 20%, and the other team is bringing way more than 20%. So they were determined equal on that footing
Points
for that, and that's probably what's going to be the biggest source of misunderstanding.
In the RFP that we got that were used for AECom and the contract we're signing, is there a timeline in it?
There is, but we've had good reasons for delays, I think, and he's asked to look at their proposal. And I'm not gonna let him do that for 2 reasons. One, it's not foiable until we've actually got a negotiated contract with that proposer. But 2, if contract negotiations fall through with AECom, then I can go to him. And he can't look at their proposal until after that is a done deal, because it gives him leverage in the negotiation process. He can see what they didn't bid on, what they did bid on, and things like that. So that's what the meeting on Friday is gonna center around. Say, look, and we gave him, we let him slide on a couple things. First of all, throughout the proposal, we're called coastal. He doesn't even have our name right, and he didn't have anything notarized. After the proposal date, we let him notarize everything.
But you think maybe he's gone through this before, that's why he's.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I would like to find some work for this guy, because he's a nice fella, and he's going a little bit off the deep end here for me, and we just gotta talk him back out of that, so. Two more quick things. One, I attended the last thing on Friday night. I attended a session on pandemic planning. And I totally want to go get a drink afterwards, because it's not a cool subject. But I asked some pretty pointed questions about it, and that this is something that will be part of our safety plan and business continuity plan, which are 2 huge things on the Silverman list. And I don't know how much planning you could do for a pandemic, because it's just opened up a whole new Pandora's box on stuff. But what hit me was how to handle situations where you lose 30% of your staff. All right, so that's something I think we need to think about in terms of, okay, what are we doing if I've got, no Doug and 10 drivers are out and those types of things. And there's a point in time where, we gotta talk to emergency management about what their thoughts are on quarantine and things like that. So it was a good discussion. It was scary,
This has been on the news, This has been, I think they found a couple cases in
yeah.
South Carolina.
Well, she said something that was interesting, that she thought it was much more likely that a natural pandemic would occur rather than one that was like terrorist implemented, which I thought was interesting. But
And we went through all that at the university as well.
I thought it was medical.
We're an agency that brings people together, which is probably the last thing you want if you have a natural pandemic emergency. It's what we basically came down to is trying to find the smallest unit of survivable, social structure, as opposed to there being any true, real good governmental response to it. But
So-
it'll keep you awake on, if you just want to stay awake, you can worry about stuff like that.
Exactly. So last thing, Michelle and I met with the workforce development folks on, was it Monday? My calendar's broken. And they have let us know about a potential grant program. They're awarding 6 grants across the state, of which our workforce development folks can apply for $100,000. And we talked about a number of potential service changes we can make. The bid or the proposals are due May 15th. They're going to they're going to award by the end of June. And so if we were awarded, this is something that we could start up as early as October 1st.
Wouldn't Laura's service?
Getting there. Man, you stole my thunder.
Yeah.
We talked about Georgetown and some additional service in Andrews, because they're in Georgetown as well. They're also in Williamsburg.
Workforce development is a state program.
This is a state program. I'm not sure where the funds are coming from. That's another question we need to ask. Remind me about that, because I don't want to match federal dollars with federal dollars, because I can put this into our rural.
I think they are federal
Program.
dollars. I think they are federal workforce dollars that come to the region.
So we need to look at the rules.
Into
That's
the
straight.
state is awarding 6
Yeah.
grants up to $100,000.
And we talked about Laura, we talked about Andrews, and the problem I have is that I'm thinking that if I want to put one bus out to augment service, that's about 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's going to be in the neighborhood of 150 to 160,000 if it's close by. If it's down in Andrews and I got a lot of deadhead to get down there, then it's going to be a much larger number. So for this first iteration, I thought it might make some sense to get some service to Loris and Bucksport.
And how would we afford them next year and the year after?
Well, that's a problem. We had a meeting with the mayor of Loris yesterday, and that was sort of brought to us through Representative Rice's office. He was really excited to talk to us as county administrator, or city administrator was excited. We know that there's stuff coming from the county for service at Bucksport, and we're going to have a request into Conway for some additional service. So I think if we partner those 2 locations, we have this big circle that we do on the Route 1. We would turn that into 2 more linear routes. One that would start in Bucksport and come up and serve 501 and 378 and 501 and come in, and then one that would start out in Loris, come down 701 and serve sort of the northern half of that route. So,
And a long-term solution to that is an employer-based solution, because they're the ones that are going to reap the positive benefits.
well, and we talked about that. There's some new employers out there in Lawrence, so we might get some reverse commute out
Yeah.
there. We would call it a pilot program, so we're not updating any public information necessarily. It would go on for a year, it would have some changes on the Route 1, but I think it would improve service on Route 1, which is what we'll go to talk to Conway about. And I think it's a good idea, and what will happen is it will roll into our rural program, and we might see some additional funds that
Yeah.
way. So that's the only real source of sustainability we have with it, but we will make sure everybody understands that it's a year-long program, and worst case scenario, we revert back to the old one at the end of next September.
So if it's a 1-year pilot, then the paratransit implication, we would not have responsibility for paratransit?
We would run it as an express. There might be a couple of pickup points in Lawrence and Bucksport, but we wouldn't be picking up a lot in between necessarily, so we call them express to sort of hold off on the paratransit
I
side.
think
if we
that
can.
4 or 5 people on those new routes you're talking about for neighbor runs. Not that many, but it's pretty far out there. I do about 80-mile round trip when I take.
Yeah, it's a ways out there. I put it on Doug's list and John to kind of think about what Route 1 might change to, and that sort of thing. But I think it's something, if we pushed it to January 1st, we could, if we have trouble getting it designed. But
Who did you meet with? Who was the person on Friday or Monday that you met with?
Michelle, what's the lady's name?
I know those people, so I'm wondering.
We're actually being redirected to Isla. She'll be writing the grant on behalf of the workforce development.
But who's the director now, or who did you meet?
Kim Burke is the one, she's over all 3 regions.
Kim,
Burke, B-U-R-K-E.
She's over Waccamaw, the whole region, so it's Warrior, Georgetown, and Waynesburg County.
Okay.
So do we have to identify an employer whose employees are gonna use the service?
We need to collect some data on it, yes. And we will certainly be talking to the employers. We need to cobble together some money. I'm hopeful that Councilman Phillips would help us in order to serve Bucksport and all of these to the tune of $7,500 to $10,000. We're asking for $50,000 from Conway, so some of that money would go towards this. And then we have Loris would be on the hook for $7,500 to $10,000, and then we would do the rest.
You know, or Georgetown Tech would be a partner in that, or if there's the Darlington, I'm getting my geography kind of mixed up, but that group specializes in training, by and large, to meet the workforce needs, and if there's a way we can make a training component to that, you know,
And that's
who's the president now, or Georgetown Tech, or
right, and that is totally kind of where we're headed with this, is training and employment.
Yeah.
We haven't talked, we talked to Bucksport next Thursday.
And we've got Normont.
But we will be talking to Belmont, we'll be talking to Warrior, Georgetown
So
Tech.
Yeah.
we have to show
There's a litany.
partnerships with all of these.
If
But
I
both-
had to choose, or Georgetown Tech would be my preference over Miller Mott, but I think Miller Mott has an element of scam associated.
Well, and the mayor,
Yes, yeah.
the mayor of Loris going into this was thinking, you know, service down Route 9, and I'm like, that's in the plan, I mean, that's in our vision. I said, but there's nothing in North Myrtle Beach yet, so we don't, you know, we're just sort of putting it in on an island. So it makes a lot more sense, and it's gonna be a lot more cost effective to get them down to Conway, and then they have a straight shot to all those educational facilities, as well as the hospital, as well as a number of employers.
And what about the county on Little River? You know, don't they ever think that they need any services up there? Because we don't get anything from the
Well-
county. You got the hospital there,
Whether or not they think we need services up there or not, I mean, the issue is there's no additional funding.
but they
So,
want Buckport, and they want, you know, different things.
I think down the road, we need to start talking to the hospital, we need to get some additional grassroots support for service up there. We do need to get up to the city of North Myrtle Beach and at least get a study going.
You see the size of that hospital?
It's huge. There's one
Yes.
right up there by my house too, at Carolina Forest, that's
Yes.
just as big.
Yes.
So once International Boulevard opens up, I'd love to run 7X down through there. So,
It's, you know, and all your, many of your doctors from Grand Strand are going there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're just leaving.
yeah.
There's no neurologists there at Grand Strand. They all went to Loris or they went to Little River.
Well, that's where I found my doctor, in Carolina Forest. That's it for the general manager's report, unless there's any questions. Okay.
That was our chair.
Just look down and sit down.
Rob, you're up.
See, a few minutes.
One thing I failed to mention on the budget is that we still have $157,000 in local funds going unused, which we'll preserve as best we can.
We're gonna take a 10-minute break. Let's take a 10-minute break.
All right.
Okay.
I meant it. Because I had 4 meters.
How are you?
Good, how about you?
Good. You like it?
Learning more and more. Now that some of the audit's over, Ron, they have really more things to getting better now. Some neighbors are going in for new stuff, so it's growing now.
It's like the early days of writing.
Come on.
But I'm doing good. Hey, hi.
They're really nice.
We've never met.
Yeah, I did.
I'm very
supportive
supportive. Yeah, it's good to meet you. Glad you're here.
Remind me of you, I don't think.
She's
like back up.
Yeah.
She's on emergency contingency.
Everyone says good things about you.
Yeah, she's great.
I didn't make her do it. Well, good luck.
No, I'm coming back.
Is the manager like this, it's back?
Brian and I, we wanted to know why we thought alike. I said we grew up about 10 miles apart.
Right, it's from Chicopee
And
Weir
this
on
is
our,
a
right up the
long
street from
building.
where I was born.
Yes.
I've been there before.
We're just on a 10-minute break. We finished with manager's report.
How long building that
And
thing
now
back?
bring it up to approval.
Mini market.
Need a few minutes.
Okay.
Well, it's on the, it's in between Mini Market and, River Hill. Because the restaurant
You're
that
not
is,
talking about building that out.
well, the building now, I think that built is the one that sits in front of the,
Yeah.
the restaurant. And lunch. Oh, you have to be there. Well, he
I just fell in, fell into like a
and his
little
friend who
erosion
has the
hole,
same type of
Not a
restaurant.
big thing, but that's what it is, on sand. Just it's not a bad break, it's not this place. Everything's right area, and everything's there. So I've got I think I'm probably really better than I've got 3 weeks on the budget, no wait. And I'm 2 weeks into it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, appreciate everything you're
They
doing.
wanted it for surgery, food and whatnot.
So they're nice there, too. Very nice.
Let's do anything.
I'm sure we'll do.
I think I'm doing good. I think I passed surgery.
And he's opened up a booth in the back there, too. He's got a
I
big
go back,
booth.
well, one thing is today, within 2 weeks, I'll go back. Another week of it, another week of just as good.
Very nice.
Hopefully then
And he puts saucy spinach and he puts peppers.
well, I'm going very slow. First of all, I can't see, so I can't use my cane. Yeah, so I'm just going very slow. I'm staying home a lot. I'm committed to getting better.
Instead of regular french fries, I
Plans to get back to work. Big walk, big mover.
Yeah, that, they have a.
A couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks.
They have a buffet down there. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm no problem. And I'm very lucky. I have great medical coverage. I have a wife who drives me around. I don't have a job.
Before you get to that?
Oh, yeah, it's, yeah.
Before you get to that, coming from this way?
Yeah.
Gratitude. I gotta have
It's
gratitude.
on the same side, and it sits back, it's a long building, it's been a
I've been
restaurant
sitting
all
outside
along.
although last night for the first
But
time.
now,
The ski was
they're,
possible.
he's killing fish.
I'm in the
Fish and shrimp.
You got
Conway.
Hey, son.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice place.
Yeah, that's good. Very nice.
Wow, no,
Yeah.
it's cooking it.
We live on 22 acres.
Yeah, it's cooking it.
Nice
No, I
place.
haven't
Mostly
been
wood.
in it, but I'm over the years.
Yeah.
It's been open and it's closed. Right?
Yeah, we had roast beef the other day, but it's full of olives. It's awful.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the
But I thought maybe.
mosquitoes bothered me
Got
last
my
night.
kids' fingerprints all over it.
Too bad. I know it's warm, but I thought maybe it's been so dry. Maybe they had
Big
it out
tall
there.
fella.
It was very cool.
That is
Tall,
like
very
very
tall.
tall.
I go to the
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't
I was able to use some
I
leisure.
try not to. I sprained my
Your
finger.
cousin, every time
But
I
I
see
do have it
him,
kind of off.
he talks
I-
sometimes.
It's a real place.
Really important story.
So I tried, somebody was moving out of their house and they wanted somebody, and I said, oh, this is, I can't even put this place in. He thinks I'm
Wow.
Brent, yeah.
I could melt it down, it might
said
put
that
something.
he's very nice, real gentleman.
Yeah, here we go.
With a base of,
Oh, yeah, you don't even told me about that. Everybody.
Yeah, I need to do that. We tried that before and it's worked, and then we just go back to that can. I've been doing it. Yeah, yeah. I got that.
Go outside for a minute.
I know, I like it.
And you know what it's probably doing to your brain.
Staying awake is one thing, increasing it does something else.
Other than the mosquitoes, I'm doing good. Hopefully next month.
All right. That is nice.
Beats a bowling trophy.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a lot of people down there. I don't know if it's been down this way or not. It's around.
Oh, that's the award. I thought you were looking at it. It's heavy.
It actually read Kevin's letter before they mentioned that. Kevin's letter did not mention about what's going on before.
I like to see the write-up. How they did that.
Bob Schneider, my Patriot GM over at Common, was like, wow.
That's great.
So Brian, do you ever go by William?
Yeah.
No Bill, no William?
My son's like, your middle name is William? Yeah. I don't know, he's still there.
You gotta watch out for snakes.
Yeah.
Snakes come around too in the garages.
Be right back.
This is a solid award.
New snakes, Bill had, the exterminator, that's our, the big man came as well, and so Bill brought out the, I guess it's like an insect trap supposed to be or something. We brought it out to me the other night and said, and I went, what? And I walked up and it was a snake, a baby snake that curled up on it.
Oh, yeah. They get right in the corner.
I took one of our fans apart this weekend and there was a snake inside it. Box fans, you know, and cleaned out, yeah.
Out in Texas in our garage, we catch these huge wolf spiders.
We did that over here.
Like tarantulas.
It looked like
Wolves, they call wolf spiders.
Yeah,
They look like a small tarantula.
There was about,
Serious.
That's great, Brian.
Thank you so much.
White spiders.
I read where they having a lot of problems with hogs.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like in the
We got one in our yard.
They talking about something to kill them out, I don't know.
Wild boars or feral pigs?
Well, they're wild hogs.
Yeah, wild hogs.
They'll probably do
Any
a
difference?
tag.
Feral pig is
I think so too.
Thin them out.
Someone hunted this one. I heard shot.
I don't know that I could tell you what.
And it's still bacon.
Yeah.
I got run over by a feral pig. Thank God.
Big tusk.
They costing a lot of money.
Yeah, they do a lot of damage. They did damage around our house.
You know, I'm also shoving using the same one for 5 years.
Yeah, they're not
We
pleasant.
like pictures, use the same one for 5 years, and you get the one.
I walked up in one of the yard, I just walked up to it. And I came around the fence, I said, is that a dog? And,
Before you broke your foot or?
no, this was last summer, yeah, before I broke my foot. I jumped in the truck was there, you know, I jumped in the truck and sat there for like half an hour. And he went away.
In a case like that, DNR will give out so many tags and open season on them for hunters.
Yeah, I think it's open season all the time for them.
Yeah,
Someone got this
they're
one.
trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So are we ready to restart?
Yeah, I'm waiting for Kitty.
Ooh.
How many of these come on a pad, Michelle?
You can.
It's 100 sheets to a package.
How many we print all together?
100,000 sheets.
We have 1,000 pads.
They're coming still, they're being brought in batches. So I wanted just to wait till we could look at our list and make that distribution roll out all at one time to keep the excitement there instead of piecemealing one here and one there.
And are you doing that thing that they did last year, maybe the year before with the Entertainment Express?
That was last
inviting-
year, yes, sir.
You're doing that again?
We even created some space for advertising.
We're working on that. I'm actually meeting this afternoon with Lawrence Johnson Technical College on 4D and applying that, so that's an advertising opportunity for someone's business to pop up while you're looking at the system map and you're looking at the entertainment.
Oh,
You
really?
hold your smartphone over the map and it goes 3D on you. Very cool.
So I'm meeting with Tech this afternoon on that.
Conceivably on your system map, you can put it over Tanger outlets and see all the stores that are there.
And where would the map be, like on the bus?
That's your system
Your
map.
system map.
Oh, I see, I see, I see.
I'm taking the maps to them today, so we can start that groundwork.
So I could lay the map here and then hold my phone over it and get more information.
Exactly.
It'll pop up.
That's not the QR code thing.
No, this is a totally different technology.
Okay, I thought it was QR code.
QR code is,
Called
I don't see that
4D.
anymore.
It's starting to go away.
It's yesterday's
So
news.
it's 4 dimensions.
We're skipping the 20s to 2000 to 2010. We're going right to 2020.
All right.
Yes, yesterday's news.
Okay.
We will, number 11, approval for resolutions.
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority, resolution number March 2017-05, authorization to negotiate and award contract for bus stop designation program.
Okay, we have a resolution with a motion for bus stop signs.
You need a motion.
We need a motion. And
I so move.
making a motion, please.
Second.
You second it? Okay. Any discussion on the
Yeah,
motion?
why is Deb Asquith, the only time her name is Deb, and all 4 of these is on this one, the other says Deb.
Yeah, we have different versions of
You
these
should have
floating
your
around.
full name.
I'll make it.
Is it Deborah?
No, we never got it. Only got in trouble. It's, I go by Debbie. I go by Deb, but
I
Debbie.
know, well, I go by Kitty, but that's my, anything that's legal, that's what
The
I do.
resurrection.
Well, I have another question. Is there a
What was the
date
first
for
one?
the,
What was the first one?
the first one was about Deb's name.
Oh, okay.
Was it that, was it? That's it, because the other 3 have her Deb.
Sorry.
All right, is there a date for beginning and ending of this project?
There will be once we have our contract negotiated.
Okay.
The original pricing and everything will be based on available funding for this year. That I suspect that will go beyond October 1st.
Yeah, thanks.
But there will be a slug of money in the 18 budget to continue it. I would suspect getting all of the stops on existing routes is 2 to 2.5 years.
And AECom will hire local people?
They have a couple of local DBEs on their team. So yes.
Are they gonna have a sample we can look at? See what the sign gonna look like?
We're purchasing those separately, so we'll gladly show you what they look like. So they won't have any control over that.
And
The only thing is citing them and installing them. We're gonna buy the signs and the poles on state contract. So that's separate from this agreement.
And will the signs have like that bus stop number on them?
At least, hopefully, website, with the words bus stop. We're going back and forth on whether or not we're gonna have Spanish. I don't, if you have an international bus symbol, I don't know that you need the Spanish. I want them to be as basic as possible, stop number. And we'll use existing poles out there if we can. That will be part of, we don't wanna put too much pole clutter out there.
Do you have any kind of issues, Brian, with municipalities?
Yeah.
We have, using a technical term, we have them out the yin yang.
But that'll be
But
their
that's why
problem,
the
right?
consultants turnkey, they gotta handle all that as part of this. So there'll be a lot of upfront, they'll have a plan of attack in each jurisdiction, who the owner is, whether or not it's a private owner, and getting easements. So that's the beauty of the turnkey, is let them worry about that. And so in the pricing, we're hoping to have what I would call as a low cost implementation for a sign and a higher cost. And we're gonna allow the higher cost for the ones that are really hard to get placed, on up to, and this is negotiable, but up to 15%, say, of all signs. And so they'll get 2 price points. They're gonna give me a price per sign for implementation, but a lower, less taxing version and a higher taxing version. And then there will be other, like some of the softer stuff, like the procedures, there'll be a lump sum price for, getting our sets of procedures and our geocoded base map and our photos and all that stuff.
When it comes to things that we produce, putting Spanish makes a lot of sense. When it comes to things such as signs, in South Carolina, in Myrtle Beach, that isn't how things are done. And it could almost blow back on us. That is not an investment that people are gonna, A, feel is needed, B, wanna make, and I hate to say that, but I also don't think it's necessary. I think that as long as we've got paper signage and whatnot that directs people to the location, and we have translation services.
Right.
I would not go down that road.
You talk about Spanish on the sign, is that what you're talking about?
And the vendor may not be as sensitive to the way things are done here, but they are done here in a certain way.
Yeah, we're gonna get sensitive to that pretty quickly. But, we do have, I'm gonna let the consultant weigh in on what they think the sign needs to be, look at national standards, making the adjustments based on, what the local jurisdiction, any kind of ordinances and those types of things. But we want them to be as consistent as possible, and they need to be reflective. They gotta meet municipal, whatever the traffic code issues are on signs.
I mean, if we have some EEOC concerns, or if we have some federal mandate on us that would dictate why we would do that, that would be, I think, completely justifiable.
Yep.
Absent that, once you look at those national standards, you can just throw them out the window and try to look at how things are.
I want to echo what Rob's saying, and you handle it very delicately about our area. I have neighbors who've actually changed financial institutions when they call in to get +1 for English, 2 for, it upsets them so much. They've actually changed businesses because they're catering to a minority, and it can backfire.
That's their problem.
That's crazy, they got problems.
Well,
Not the institution.
why did go down the road, do I?
Think about what it's like to change all your financial, your.
For me, it's I don't want to clutter up the signs. I want them to be basic. Columbia uses the term transit stop. They don't even say bus stop. So it's a picture of a bus, transit stop. Go that route. But I learned a valuable lesson on coloring of the buses that we just want them to meet the standards, and you guys will get what you get, okay?
Universal pictures may be the way to go. I mean, you may be absolutely right.
When are we gonna be surprised with this?
July 1st, I guess.
That, we have to wait that
He doesn't
long?
want to steal his thunder.
I like keeping my thunder, just in my car.
I'm gonna talk to your wife and find out.
That's unnecessary gas.
New surprises.
That's just too much gas, Brian.
How much was the bid that they gave us? And did we,
There was no cost. It was bid on,
that's the negotiation coming up.
that's one of the part of the negotiation and stuff.
Yeah,
But
they're all
we
white.
made sure the RFP included this pricing structure.
They're all white.
So they know what they're getting into. We're cobbling together two grants to start. There's there'll be 80,000 in planning funds coming from the state, and then the rest is 5307, the urban side. And, but,
Well, can we call a question?
yeah, is there any other questions?
Any
about it?
further questions? There being none, let's vote on the issue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. There being none, the motion passes.
Thank you, sir.
We've waited a long time for this. This is good.
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority Resolution Number March 2017-06. Authorization to enter into and use short-term agreements for cash flow purposes.
Okay. We have a motion. I can make a
Make a
motion. We have a second.
Second.
Okay. We have discussion on the matter.
Actually, the last sentence of the background, how is that gonna work with prior to? Can you walk me through how that building's gonna work? You gotta go notify the board and finance committee prior to you doing what you were giving you permission to do?
Well, it's just that you know, we know these are coming,
I understand.
all right? So all I'm saying is that this part of your report will show when we're contemplating using them.
Yeah, I see.
Using,
But it says, okay.
that's what I'm trying to say. If it doesn't say that, then
I
we
get
have
what
to
you're
work
saying. We're trying to, instead of you coming to this every time, we know there's gonna be needs coming up, instead of each individual company giving you authority up to 250K. But you're gonna notify the board and the finance committee prior to you executing this.
through,
I just understand the
but
need for
through
the
the
prior
cash
to.
requirements page. You're gonna know they're coming. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so really,
I mean, I don't see us doing thes on an emergency basis.
okay.
We see them coming
You're gonna know
weeks in
30 You're gonna
advance,
know 31 days out in advance. Okay, I got you.
for the most part.
Okay.
Does it cover an emergency basis though? What if,
It would, no.
what if I need to make payroll 2 days?
That's
and
why, that's
something
getting why,
happens
if
and-
we're trusting you to, you don't have to come back to this every time. I just kind, my real question is prior to.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
just
think
notify
that
us.
defeats the purpose of it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
So you wanna delete that sentence?
Maybe just
Or
strike
the
the
prior
sentence.
to.
We have to check the policy document, but, because I
Oh,
cut and
you
pasted
make it-
this from the policy
Make
document.
it consistent with the resolution.
Okay.
Change the policy document.
So we want to note this.
Well, we can go, when we go,
I'll change it while you're in executive session.
there you go, yeah.
Vote on it again.
Eliminate the last
So
sentence.
just eliminate that last sentence.
Is that all?
Vote on it now. Eliminating the last sentence.
Yeah, you could just amend your motion.
Any further questions?
Let's do it this way. Let's amend your motion and then we'll get you a version that can be signed when you come out of executive session.
All right, so.
So who made the move?
I
Yeah.
did. So I'll amend my motion to strike the last sentence from the background so that it does not need prior notification.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the resolution.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, or any further discussion on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any against?
What do we vote on, to amend or for the?
We voted to amend.
Amended.
Okay.
Amended.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, next one.
all right.
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority Resolution Number March 2017-07, acceptance of independent audit report for fiscal year 2016.
Okay. We have a motion. I'm making a motion to,
I so move.
Second.
second, okay. Any discussion on the acceptance of independent audit report? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against?
Ask the secretary to so note that Kitty has approved this first of all of us.
The
So noted.
motion passes for the acceptance of the independent audit report. Thank you.
With enthusiasm, because I'm nominator.
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority Resolution Number March 2017-08, approval of FY 2017 budget revision.
I so moved.
Okay,
Second.
make a motion, okay, we got a second. Any discussion on the approval of the 2017 budget revision? There being none, we have a vote on it, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any against? There being none, the motion passes for the approval of the 2017 budget.
I'm not clear on one thing. Have we voted to approve that second amendment or
No.
vote to?
No,
vote to
we
amend it?
amend, we amend.
Okay,
So we're gonna have to vote completely on that.
Okay.
On the
When we
amended.
come back,
When it comes
executive
back.
session.
Okay.
Okay. So, ready for executive committee?
All right, 1 minute.
Go ahead and, I guess we gotta vote first and then.
Yeah, we go into executive session for a personnel matter.
Second.
Executive session, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on that? None? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, nay? Okay, motion passed. We're going into executive session. come out of executive session.
Another, you have to.
Nothing was voted on.
That's your motion.
We have a motion.
I move.
Your motion.
So
So,
moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? There being none, I vote to come out of executive session where nothing was voted on at this time.
Approval.
Have approval? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, nay?
Okay.
Executive session is completed and it's been voted and approved. Come out of executive
so you
session.
know.
We need to go back.
Okay, now we're going to review an amended resolution that we were discussing before. Read it again.
The sentence was taken out, so it is not in this one. Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority, Resolution Number March 2017-06. Authorization to enter into and use short-term agreements for cash flow purposes.
So if I'm asked to vote on Brian's ability to write resolutions, I can say sucks.
Okay, we have an amended resolution, number
No X in there.
March 2017-06, it's amended.
He's turning already.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a, okay. Any discussion on the amended resolution? There being none, we shall vote on the amended resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. The motion passed. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure sucks was not on the list of
Okay, there was a discussion though regarding getting a letter out to, did you say Mr. Peterson? For the,
Yeah, we're gonna,
Do you need the numbers?
probably just don't, you don't need to,
or should we send it to the
was
mayor?
that was that a decision?
Well, it should be done.
Yeah,
I don't think we gotta vote on that.
We don't have to vote on
We
it.
didn't vote on
Joe
it.
just is gonna do it.
Right, okay,
So
so
the
the
chairman
chairman.
is gonna do it.
In there about salaries.
So he needs to work it out, and then I
I don't
guess
know if
Joe wants you to write the
Oh,
letter.
I want you to
Salaries.
review
I think so.
how many times he's, in the past year, that he's attended, and bringing it to their attention, and what would you like us, we'd like to hear from you what you feel about missing so many meetings.
And this will go to Mr.
I don't think you wanna say that. I mean, my opinion is you just wanna tell him that he's missed them.
Okay.
We don't care how he
All right.
feels.
Just
Just let you know.
for your information.
Right.
And you're not being represented, aren't you gonna put that in there?
No, I wouldn't put it in there, I just say he's
No,
not.
I'm-
That's
They
all.
can
You
draw
can do
that
what you want.
conclusion.
And in doing so, you're not
Maybe,
representative.
maybe he can, yeah,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maybe
you're
he
not
can.
representative.
Well, I don't know that.
We hope.
But we,
Maybe the city doesn't know that he's not attending.
We'll,
Yeah, that's-
we'll
I'm
put
sure
something
they
together
don't
and
know. I'm
shoot
sure
it out to everybody and,
But going in, you probably
you
tell
know,
them he
weigh in
is.
on it if you need to.
We also sent a
And
letter,
get it under his signature.
we sent a letter yesterday to the legislative delegation requesting that they reappoint
Yeah, I'm
Mr.
done.
Silverman.
I'm done.
Not till April 28th.
Yeah, yeah, I'm done.
And if they don't appoint somebody before then, you still continue until they do.
You haven't heard anything?
No.
Really?
Is that normal how they do it, or they just
No.
let everybody?
Oh, sometimes.
Sometimes it is, yeah.
Seems to be MO.
Yeah.
I was on for a year and a half before, well, that was during the show.
I was on
They-
4 months
They
without
were
being
afraid,
appointed.
they were afraid to ask anybody for
So-
anything.
We could, probably adjourn.
Which you would have.
okay, well, let me go to any old business.
What's that?
I just have a question.
Sure.
When you struck, there were two sentences that were struck.
What?
No, one.
Just the last,
You just saying there were two that were struck out.
So
I don't
what-
mean to be, I'm not trying to.
No, that's all right.
But I just noticed that.
Gotta bring it up.
Where is it? It's moving around.
Here.
right here.
Oh, good catch. Let's make it right.
It's just the wordsmithing that I do. I just-
Yeah, no, no.
What was the,
It should have, there's the, what's
Use
missing,
of-
use of the loan
oh,
proceeds.
I took out use
You
of
wanna go
loan
put that back in
proceeds,
there real
yes, I
quick?
will. I'm sorry.
They
Sorry
just
about
earned your salary.
Hey, Every penny.
I don't know why they call you Deb, sometimes they
Should
Debbie
vote
the
for a
other
raise.
time, it's got my attention.
You know, actually, I go by Deb now, but legally, actually, my name is Deborah Lynn Nelson, or Gasper now. But, over the years, I've kind of shortened it to Debbie, like legally, Debbie L, and they, like, IRS and, you know,
Your alias is Debbie.
everybody just kind of takes it their own
It's
question.
better than being called Deb for now.
Are you
And
kidding?
Deb,
I
Deb is a
have,
casual.
I have more trouble with the spelling of my name. I have, my insurance has an ER on it, and if anybody gives me a prescription or anything, puts AR on it, they won't fill it.
I've never had issues with
emails that you have, I got about 4 in mine.
My daughter changed her name kind of from
I
Rebecca.
have SC, no, I just have SC.
Still she does her legal stuff,
Well,
CCA.
one computer sends it from
I think mine's just a matter of
Angelo.
dropping, of course, the Deborah was just.
AOL,
I
I
had as a
don't have
kid,
it anymore.
Right.
And then I immediately.
And I
switched
have
out my
Catherine
Yeah,
college
at Gmail too. I only
We
have
know,
two.
this, in 2019, only 2 years away,
I got,
is the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. So it'd be big stuff in Utah,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Promontory Point.
That's what you got.
So I'm looking around like for tours and stuff, you know.
Well,
see-
if they send it to
so I'd like to take a tour of
I
like
don't get
the
it.
old
Yeah.
alignments of the train, you know, that are either,
every.
maybe some are there, probably a lot of them are not, it's been
SBK,
changed around a lot.
AR.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun.
I don't know, I should
I'm a
have put
railroad
Kitty at the
lover.
beach, I don't know why.
He's got a caboose on his property.
But no, I don't want to change it because I've had it for so
Oh, that's so
many years
neat.
and I never.
Yeah, I bought it and I'll show you a picture of it, I think I have it. We bought it, I don't know, 1990 something.
And Jason still lives there.
Yeah, my son lives in it.
Well, we're still doing a,
Special.
all we did was come out and try to finish this,
Okay.
resolution.
Let me call you in about 20 minutes, okay?
I know there was nothing we need to mediate.
Okay, now you got something.
I don't think so. So no decisions were made in.
Well, the guy that used to run this line out
I'll see you.
here. He fixed it up
Thank you very
for
much.
birthday parties.
Well, we're trying to roll them out when all
And then he lost
100,000
his
get in.
contract with the county and moved
So
to Warren
if you
City
can
where
make
he had a
a
railroad.
I'd have it between tomorrow and
And I bought
Friday.
it from there.
And then,
It still says Lockmont, we had it painted and all that
Well, there's
stuff.
two more. So that we can come up with a plan, just take a couple of days and then just knock them all out. Because if we've got more on the list than what I have in the
Well,
small
it's
batch.
not we put it that much, and we did put it back.
It's not fair. They all need to be, because they'll get excited. You know, your property may get it, and your property may not, so why, you know, no.
Air
I
conditioned
just
it,
want
you know,
one
rewire
concerted
it.
effort to get them all out.
Then
If
19,
someone
Eric
changes
is
his
going to
mind,
that.
you can
I'll
always
do
do the
it one
Airbnb
day,
thing.
yeah. See,
Yeah,
I normally
yeah.
attend it.
It's pretty
And
rough.
I helped with,
Yeah,
all the
it's not
committee meetings
real,
last
real
year. It was just the
fancy.
day of,
Okay.
But it's
since
cool
this
that
was
it's
a new
big.
one, Erica knew how to do the stand down, I let her do the stand down, and then I did the
It
stand
started
down.
out on a railroad.
But yeah, I'll be there for
called,
23rd.
Okay.
So we'll have a busy day that day.
Buffalo, Chicago, St.
Yeah,
Louis.
just for you,
And
trying to
then it got
find
sold
out
a few times and then it was
the
short.
PAC committee, because I know Marvin's got 11,
But
but
I
you
think
have
the
the
last
9 or the
booth
10,
is,
because they can only
uh,
go to the person in the PAC committee.
And by the late
try to-
70s.
I know,
this
that's
was
why I don't like
Okay,
it.
now I
Alright,
got.
so when is the next one?
He just moved it to the 19th.
And a lot of the
Yeah,
work
I
went on in.
Wait a minute.
This electronic light.
It's the
Okay.
Wednesday after Easter.
And late, you know.
So it's that big, it's moved from that day, so I'm gonna be happy to.
Because he said that it was at 9, 10, I don't know which will come first, the PAC and service, and then at 11, we will find out.
A year to say.
I have my iPad.
Back in the 10,
Now,
Oh, yeah, you can, I just know that you don't normally have that time to do that, that's why I'm just trying to.
The first and third Wednesday, I'm gonna have one executive session. So,
Anything
yeah, I
goes
should be
wrong
good.
with it.
Keep that in mind, when I do my travels, I've
And then
seen
just-
interesting.
Anything that someone
Well, yeah, I do.
That's right, that's right, that's right. That's how I have it all together. But when I have a problem with one, and I make a change, I put something on it, it doesn't work right, it doesn't work on all of them.
It does, yeah, cut off.
That's right,
I think it's in
I'm
California.
messed.
Yeah, it is, but.
But the only thing is, I have See, I do newsletters and things,
So we
and
do
one
the,
computer does the
Okay, so the
newsletter better
revised
than the other.
Okay,
thing
we
is
got
being,
a-
I don't think you need to redo a vote, we just got this to match the vote.
Yes,
Okay.
one.
So we just need people to sign it, and then we can have a motion to adjourn.
No, actually, sucks
I
with the
have one computer
SUXX.
that's gone bad.
Your lady does the commercials.
I just thought about it. Alternative spelling, we have alternative facts.
Did you come here for that, or did you superimpose her?
Alternative
She came here.
facts.
I don't like the.
Yeah, well, you
It's
guys.
probably gonna go down in the
Out in
annals
Hollywood.
of presidential
She's been
I had a lot of-
things like
I
right there with
send
strategery
things
and.
off.
Nuclear.
Because, yeah.
Nuclear, oh,
Something
God, I hate it
we
when
can't
they say
afford to
nuclear.
pay.
Nuclear.
She does a good job with that.
First I didn't like it, and then I sort of like it, and then,
Bernie, can I give you a ride home?
No, Grace is gonna pick me up, I have to go to the doctor today.
Oh.
So, I'm not going home.
Doug said that we're cutting next one of those Christmas signs for you.
No, it's a limo sign.
Oh, it's limo.
I have a Christmas sign, probably better than yours.
I have a blue jacket that says limo on it, and about 15 years ago when we were in Spain, somebody came over and said, "Oh, you're in a lot of trouble, aren't you?" That was when Sugarloaf was,
Oh, my goodness.
and he was from Charlotte. I
Oh.
said, take that lousy jacket off. Lou."
See?
I said, even in Spain?
Goodbye all, see you next month.
Bye.
Bob, take it easy.
Meeting's adjourned.
We want to go through the old business, new business announcements?
Yes.
Have we signed that resolution, has that resolution gone around?
Yeah,
Still
now it's
not.
going, yeah, it's
Okay.
All right.
I thought we adjourned.
Is there any old
already.
business?
Shit, I was ready to be out of
New
here.
business?
10 minutes ago.
Any announcements?
Can somebody please
If not,
adjourn?
Well, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Nay?
Thank you all.
Adjourned.